I gained the one thing I wanted, and that was to spend time with my family and never miss a dance class or recital or a soccer game. So ultimately it got me to exactly, what was most important to me. And that was to have that time and financial freedom to spend with my family.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Giuseppe Grammatico, who is a corporate refugee that now helps people find the right franchise for them. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and bring balance to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a monthly email where I share the best articles I read this month, let you know about upcoming episodes, and share a little wisdom. You can also listen to coaching calls under the Coaching Calls tab. I also share the most interesting articles I read every week on Facebook at facebook.com/Richer Soul. And there's also a Facebook group where you can ask questions and interact with other listeners. Today's quote comes from Carl Jung. One who looks outside dreams. One who looks inside awakens. That's the underlying theme in today's episode. To spend the time thinking about what you want from life and business, and then finding the match that works for you. Sometimes we need help with this process, and there's nothing wrong with that. Last week's action step was to forget about the budget and automate your savings. Seriously, this one step is the reason I am wealthy. Create systems and let them run. My automated saving system built me wealth without me thinking. Every so often, I tweak it up a notch, and then I go back to living life. I've even taught my kids these same principles. You have to get this going. And if you're struggling with this concept or don't understand what to do, schedule a call with me and we can work through it for you based on your specific needs in one coaching session. The payoff is wealth versus financial struggles. We are in a new world of normal. I'm getting ready to ship off my son to college, and we're struggling with their processes and their costs. They seem to be very confused about how they're going to do things this fall, and they're not making great commitments at this point. If I had a different kid, I would have probably encouraged him to just skip it. But it's the best fit and outcome for him, and so we're going to deal with it. And as you know, we figured out the least expensive, or at least one of the least expensive ways to get through this. One of my side missions is to create a new way of educating our young adults. It would be great to have a place to send them to learn to live on their own, learn life skills like how to cook and how to shop, and taking the time to do the things that we talk about on this podcast. Imagine a class that the outcome is a written life plan. Another class where the outcome is a financial plan, along with understanding stocks and bonds and real estate and how to create an automated system for it all. A class on how to build relationships, on how to conquer the voices in our head that create fear and doubt and how to stop them. A real gym class where you learn to squat, bench, and deadlift, along with real flexibility training. And of course, part of this is forcing the kids to go through it. You don't get to opt out. You have to show up at the gym 3 or 4 or 5 days a week. Along with that, a nutrition class of how to really eat and a system to test how does your body react to food. An entrepreneur class that the outcome is launching your own business, even if it is to be a solopreneur or to do gig work. I think a 1-year-long program is enough to get people moving. Oh, and let's not forget a class on how to negotiate. We might even have a mentorship program where you work with someone who does real estate investing or app development or so many things. And let's do this at a fraction of the cost of what we have to pay now. The biggest struggle I face is helping my kids to face societal pressure, and they also need to be away from me to learn to fly. It's funny, other kids pay me to coach them, and sometimes my own kids won't listen. Part of the training could be to have them work in a franchise and learn all the different aspects of business over 2 years so they could launch their own. That's our topic today. Seeing if owning a franchise is a good decision for you. Let's face it, you don't own your job, and while you think it's safe, you're putting 100% of your income sources and safety in someone else's hands. And many times companies, especially in down cycles, make absolutely dumb decisions about who to let go. So, some of you are at the other end of the spectrum. You feel tired and stuck working 60 hours a week in a corporate job to make someone else rich. Today's guest is going to show you a path out of all of this. Giuseppe Grammatico is a franchise veteran who helps executives find financial and time freedom through franchise ownership. Giuseppe is a successful corporate refugee who has worked on every side of franchising, from owning franchises to working with franchisors, to helping others use franchising to escape the corporate grind. He lives in New Jersey with his beautiful wife and 2 kids. He's host of the Franchise Freedom podcast, which I was a guest on to talk about Profit First. He just finished his book that will guide you through the franchise process, and there's a link in the show notes to get a free copy for yourself. We also recorded a webinar on Profit First. If you're a business owner, check it out. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. Let's meet our guest. Welcome to Rich Your Soul, Giuseppe Grammatico. It's great to have you join us today.
Thanks, Rocky. Very excited to be here today.
And I'm excited to learn from you today and to talk about the world of franchising. But before we do, let's start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Great question. So, grew up first generation Italian. I grew up in a household where I learned English at the age of 6, and from there, just learned about entrepreneurship. My family owned a restaurant. They opened up their restaurant back in 1975, a few years before I was born, and that was my first lesson in money. You know exactly how money works. Went to school, graduated, bachelor's degree, graduate degree, and looking back at all those years, all those money lessons go back to the family business, which is ironic because you think going to a really good school, you'd learn about entrepreneurship and how money works, and that just wasn't the case. So I've learned basically from business owners and primarily from my parents. It was maybe not appreciated back then. As I was younger, didn't really understand how things work, but looking back, really want to thank them for everything I know about money.
And it's funny because I I kind of have the same path. I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics and an MBA. And no, they don't teach you how to build a business. They don't teach you how to run it efficiently and to how to increase your profits and be profitable. It's funny that they don't actually teach you the business of business in school. You actually have to get out there and try it and do it and learn it. And it's a shame. So hopefully there's so many resources now out there, though. It's good because you can learn if you're willing to, but don't expect school to teach you how to be a successful business owner.
Yes, that's probably the best takeaway of today's show. learn from the pros, learn from the actual business owners, and that's my if you take away one thing, that's probably the best piece of advice we can give.
So you started the traditional career in corporate. How did that go for you?
Corporate, in the beginning, it was nice. Graduated, got a really good job, paid really well in the investment world. And the more and more I did it, I just realized I just didn't have any control. I had a very long commute into New York City. It seemed as if the more money I brought in, the less I made as I had a sales position. A lot of politics, a lot of changes. It seemed as if company was always looking to make, this very large company, without naming them, was just looking to make a lot of money, constantly cutting our compensations and things like that. So it just started to wear on me. It was very tiring. And, years ago, I had read a book. It was called The Millionaire Next Door. And it was eye-opening. It talked about just, what the average business owner looked like, from everything from the cars they drove to the clothes they wore. And it was an eye-opener. There was many other books that I read, including Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and there was a few others. But it just talked about, it wasn't all about how much you made. It was how much you kept. And that was definitely a aha moment for me. Whereas two people could be making the same amount, but the business owner tends to take home much more, given all the benefits and the tax benefits and things like that. So really like that idea, but it wasn't just always about money. It was just more about control. I myself had a baby on the way, 2.5 hour commute into the city. And I told my wife, there's no way I'm going to be commuting 5 hours a day and not seeing my first child, let alone my children. As we have two now. So I decided to make the change and say enough was enough. This was a time. There's never a perfect time, but at that time I was, I believe, 26, 27 years old. I said I'm gonna start my own business. I learned a lot from my parents in the restaurant industry, and said, I'm gonna move forward. This is the time. I'm gonna take that risk. And first year, like with any business, I was in the franchise business, was difficult. Was still learning quite a bit, but would never change things. Definitely had some up and down years, but overall, I gained the one thing I wanted, and that was to spend time with my family and never miss a dance class or recital or a soccer game. So ultimately, it got me to exactly what was most important to me, and that was to have that time and financial freedom to spend with my family.
And that's important. And I think that's what people don't realize, how much you give up in some of these types of jobs that you have. And you at least had the courage to say, I'm not going to follow that traditional path. I'm going to make a change and go out and do it on my own. And congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So have you always been in the same business since you left, or has the businesses that you run evolved?
I've been in the franchising business. So, I've owned some franchises, and what I realized was I could, my purpose was to help as many people as possible. So, the second business that I started, and I partnered with a company by the name of Franchoice. Essentially what we do is we assist individuals in figuring out if business ownership is the right fit for them. If it is, we explore franchise ownership. That's the vehicle that we specialize in. And in many cases, it's not, or business ownership isn't the right vehicle. So we assist them throughout that process. And that was just a calling of mine, as I've seen and met with, thousands of people over the years that I've helped get into franchises. And I've talked many of those people not to get into entrepreneurship at all. So that was my calling. It's a free service that we offer, similar to an executive recruiter, where we're actually compensated by the franchise companies. But I just get really excited. It just kind of motivates me. It's one of the biggest decisions we could make, one of the biggest investments we can make, aside from owning a home. So I just get joy, I get excitement out of helping people to explore business ownership.
And I think that's an important thing. When you do what you love and you're good at it and people are willing to pay you for it, it's like that perfect thing where you love to do the work you do. And it's finding that fit, which isn't always easy for everyone. And that's kind of what you talk about. So I know a lot of people have dreams of owning a business, but I don't think they understand the reality of owning the business and the struggles. When you talk to people, how do you know, or what is it that you're looking for that distinguishes somebody who should run a business versus someone who should not be in business ownership?
Yeah, so I always ask the question, why are we speaking today? Where do you want to be, in 3 years, and what's holding you back? So with those questions, you start to dig into in a person's motivations as to why they want to own the business. The number one red flag for me is, well, I'm unhappy with my job. I just want to explore business ownership, which is essentially the grass is not always greener, as I tell everyone. And the second one is the money. I want to become a business owner because everyone that owns a business makes a ton of money. So, we kind of, and you and I know where this is going, right? It's obviously a bad idea if we're doing it just for the money. It's I always give the example. Well, a surgeon, looking at that, becoming a surgeon as a career, because they make a lot of money, and then you figure out that the sight of blood makes you pass out. It's maybe a silly example, but I kind of use that because back in the day, I think it was junior or senior year of high school, I remember taking a career assessment class, and it came to that I should look at becoming a registered nurse. Whereas the sight of blood, and I say this jokingly, but makes me want to pass out. So obviously it wasn't a good career, it wasn't a good test. And I took the test a few times and I kept getting the exact same result. So there's definitely that test definitely needed to be revisited. But, we step back and say entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. We have a large referral network of headhunters and executive recruiters. We can put them in touch with as well. It's not something we charge for. We're always here to help. But you want that motivation. Typically, we like to hear things like, I'm looking for financial and time freedom. Freedom in general is a great answer, and we like to dig in a little bit more. But what is that freedom going to give you? Not just money, but time freedom. We all have 24 hours in a day, but I want to be in control as to what I am doing in that 24 hours. So we like to hear responses like that. And that's kind of the stage one. Stage two would be, okay, entrepreneurship may be a good fit for you. Now you have two avenues. You have essentially franchising, if we, at a simplest level, and non-franchise. And what specifically are you looking for? And sometimes they don't know how to answer that. So we say, do you want a system that is built for you that you can run with day one, which is what I was specifically looking for. I wasn't interested in creating everything. Or the other route is, do you want to create everything from the name, the brand, customize the product and the service, and how all the systems flow and all that kind of stuff. So two different paths. Which is better? It depends on what you're looking for. There's no right or wrong. If you're looking for more of, let me create everything from the ground up, definitely go the non-franchise route. If you're looking for something built for you and that system in place, own the franchise. And here's the best part. You could start with a franchise and expand and own other non-franchise businesses and vice versa. This is simply just a vehicle, as with investing in stocks or bonds. These are just vehicles to get you the time freedom and financial freedom that you're looking for.
And I think that's a big part of it is understanding what you're doing and figuring out the right fit for you. And that's one of the reasons I went with Profit First is I went to myself and I said, do I want to build this all myself? Or do I just want to use somebody else's system because it's just easier to do and faster? And so I found that connecting with them made my life a lot easier. And so it was the perfect fit. And my values were in line with their values. So I didn't have to worry about that type of thing. And that's one of the things I think people have to realize with franchises is you have to follow the system. And some people don't like to follow the system. They want to create their own. But in which case, don't get a franchise or get a franchise that's got more flexibility. And that's one of the things I think that because I've talked to a couple of people who do what you do. People sometimes pick the wrong franchise. They don't think it through enough. Do you see that? Like people come in with kind of this dream of X, but they don't realize the reality of what their decision is?
Absolutely. And part of it is many people they don't know where to start. So, they drive on their way home from work or to work. They'll pass a restaurant franchise and see a line out the door and say, that's what I want to do. But they don't really understand the inner workings and how that business works. So my number one recommendation is once you decide that business ownership is the right fit, don't figure out which is the product or service. Don't just start calling restaurant franchises in the area you live in. I think that's the number one way to fail in any franchise. The number one thing to do is reverse engineer it, work backwards and figure out what does my business look like? What does my day look like? So I give the example, do you see yourself waking up every day and going to a physical location, putting that key in the door, unlocking it, and going to a physical store or an actual restaurant? Or do you see yourself rolling out of bed and logging into your laptop and running a business from home? Now, the question I get all the time is, well, which is going to make me more money? And I tell people, working from home or a retail location makes absolutely no difference as far as the end result. As if $1 million investment in a franchise or 100,000, there's no relation. There's no, I'm going to invest $1 million, so I'm going to make more. It's all about the system that's going to work for you. Because if you're going to get into a system such as a restaurant and not want to deal with a lot of turnover and minimum wage employees and open 7 days a week, it's just not going to work for you. It doesn't matter how successful the franchise is in general. So reverse engineer it, figure out what the business looks like. And to get into some more specifics, do you want to manage a general manager or two? Or do you want to, be in the business, working day in, day out, and managing every employee in the business? Do you want to have a tangible product that you can offer, or do you like services, B2B, B2C, and that kind of thing? So my recommendation there is figuring all that out, figuring out the characteristics of the ideal business. We're always going to find a business that will match up, but the more specific you are, we can start to really hone in and figure out, okay, there's over 4,000 franchises in the US alone. How do we break that number down and figure out, this is exactly what I want. Next, which franchises match what I'm looking for. And then after that, even if we do have a short list of 4 or 5 companies, do they have territory available? I see a lot of people get excited over a franchise and they'll do the research, and then to find out that there's no territory, the entire state is sold out. Someone has already developed the area. So these are things that I'm able to assist all my candidates with. We speak directly with the franchise companies, but prior to even getting into franchise names, that is the very, very last step in our process. We just like everyone to figure out, what's the ideal business look like. Starting with a blank and clean slate. Don't think about what I want to hear or what you think is going to make the most amount of money. What is the ideal business look like? We'll figure out the franchises that match it. We create a model for you. So essentially, If we don't find a franchise match in the very beginning, you have a model you can use and work with and figure out, okay, this is the ideal business. Now, which are the franchises that meet that business?
And, I think this is just, it doesn't matter whether you're buying a franchise or you're working in a job or whatever it is. I think people need to spend the time to go deep into themselves to say, what do I want from life? Like, what is really important to me and how do I want to live my life? And then figure out the way you can do that, whether it be a franchise or continuing to work, but changing the work you do. I don't think people spend enough time doing that deep introspection, and that's a problem. And then even if they sometimes think they don't always follow through to do the work to create that life. And that's what I mean, because I do that with all my clients. I'm like, you have to have a life plan. You need to define for yourself all these things that you're talking about. What is it I want? How do I want to live? And then how do I create that life to be able to do that? And so it's awesome that you help people with that step, because I think that's the most important first one. Otherwise, we constantly struggle in life.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And when you do not have that first step in place, and just say to, going back to my example, you look at the restaurant franchise, then you're just consumed looking at various restaurant franchises. So the benefit that I give to the added value, I should say, that I give to every candidate or provide every candidate is that I ask the question why over and over and over again. So when they say, well, I really, really want this and I want to explore this, I ask why. And in many cases, they don't know the answer, or they just see the restaurant, they see the line. So when I ask them, well, what does that mean to you? And we dig a little deeper, they'll say, well, there's a line. People have to eat 3 days a week. I'm sorry, three times a day, excuse me. But 3 days, I guess 3 days a week, we could do that as well. But, what does that mean to you? What does that mean eating 3 days, 3 times a day? And they'll say, well, I'm not sure. And I'll help them out. And I'll say, well, you want something that has a high demand, correct? Yeah, that's what I'm looking at. So these are these are the questions that I can provide. I question just about everything. I don't use a lot of software or programs because I feel sometimes when you use not all the programs, but many of them will kind of lead you in one direction. So there are programs out there. Once you say you're looking at fitness franchises, it'll just focus on fitness franchises. I myself will question just about everything, and I won't dismiss and say, okay, we won't look at fitness franchises. I'll put that on the back burner while we do all the other due diligence to figure out, okay, is this a match? And it may be a match at the end of the day, but the one thing I highly recommend is once we actually get into that franchise due diligence, start speaking with the companies, just contacting the franchisees and saying, hey, knowing what you know, would you do it all over again? Or this is what I'm looking for. Will this provide me the lifestyle that I'm looking for? I want to be home on the weekends. I don't want to be on call. I want to be able, in some cases, people want to keep, and this is another completely different topic, but I want to keep my job and have a side business, have a semi-absentee business where I'm only putting in an hour or two a day and I have a general manager running it. So there's lots of different options, and speaking with existing franchise owners is almost like a mini mastermind. You'll get some great feedback. You'll get to bounce some ideas off each other. And that's one of the major advantages of owning a franchise, is that you can speak with hundreds, if not thousands of franchisees all in the same system.
And because each franchise has their own corporate culture in a sense, and you've got to see if that culture fits your culture and whether or not you'll get along with them. It's funny, you keep talking about restaurant franchises and having time freedom. I look at owning a restaurant as literally having a ball and chain tied to you, right? Because if you're going to serve 3 meals a day, you're there all day long unless you're an absentee owner, in which case you've got to get great leadership to run the place, in which case your profits go down because you have to pay people to do what the owner would be there doing. And so you really need to think that through. I guess part of that question, though, is I think when people look at franchises, especially if I think of restaurants, some of these places cost a lot of money. How do people know if they have the money to be able to purchase a franchise? How much should they expect? Or it all varies, I guess.
Right. So a lot of people have the notion that you need $1 million to own a franchise, and they're talking about, or from what they've heard, it's typically some of the larger restaurant or retail businesses. And the reality is, franchises they range anywhere from $50,000 to millions of dollars. So there's a huge range. Depends obviously on your market, how many territories or physical locations. We kind of split them in half. There's service-based, where you can run the franchise from home, or have a small office or small little warehouse to hold inventory. And then you have brick and mortar or retail, such as gyms and restaurants. So, and obviously the brick and mortar is going to take a lot more of a larger investment. There's going to be build out. You're going to have the option, if you want to own the actual building, build the building, or have a long-term lease. So, but before we even get into all that, I tell everyone just to kind of get a pen and paper. On the left-hand side, put your assets. On the right-hand side, your liabilities. So what's an asset? Putting everything in there. What's in your checking and savings account? What's in your retirement accounts, money markets, investments? When I say investments, you list all the retirements, every single thing you own, cars and things like that. And on the right-hand side, and the last one was a rough idea of the market value of your home. On the right side, list all your liabilities. What do you owe on that car if you have a loan? What's left on, what's your mortgage balance? Any other debts, student loans and things like that. And you get the assets minus the liabilities will give you your net worth. And that is a very important number in the franchise world, because many franchise companies will have certain financial requirements, because they want to make sure you have the money to invest in the franchise, and not just enough to start the franchise, but enough for the first at least 6 months, because you may not make money or have revenue the first month or two. So they want to make sure that you're financially stable. They want to set you up for success, and they'll be able to give you an investment range, saying, okay, this is a range depending on your market. Obviously, the rent in New Jersey, New York may be higher than somewhere in the Midwest. So these are some ranges. This is what to look for. And then very, very next step is, once you gather that information, have account balances, I always recommend everyone in the very beginning stages to speak with a funding company. I have a few funding companies that I will refer each of my candidates to, and they offer a free service. You call them up, they'll speak with you, they'll find out exactly what you're looking to do. They'll take a look at all your assets and liabilities and figure out all your loan options. So that service is free. If you decide to move forward, there's obviously going to be a fee, but they'll give you your options and say, you can get an SBA loan at this rate for 10 years. And they'll be able to, you'll look at lines of credits or home equity line of credit on your home if you have a lot of equity. So they'll give you all your options. And that information also assists me in narrowing down the franchise search, because if they don't have savings and they're relying 100% on an SBA loan, and they can just say get up to a $200,000 loan or whatever the number is, we know to narrow our search there, and maybe not look at a brick and mortar, but more of a home-based business. So sometimes the brick and mortar retail is not a reality to start off, and we unfortunately have to give that news to the candidate. So at that point, we decide to pivot and maybe look at a service-based business, or we decide to postpone and hold off on the due diligence until the funds are available, because in many cases they are working and they are saving money. So we postpone the due diligence for 6 months to a year. So we meet everyone at where they're at. We're not here to sell franchises. We're here to find and refer them to the franchise that matches specifically what they are looking for. But going back to funding, the funding partners, one thing. One form of investment or way of funding many of the franchises that I've seen in the last 6 months have actually been through retirement accounts. I come from the finance world, from the investment world. I did not realize this was available, but you are actually allowed to fund your business with your 401k, your IRA, as long as it's not with your current employer. So if you do have a 401k or IRA at a former employer, you're able to use those assets. There is a process and there is a fee to do that. Setting up a C corporation and rolling that money over. And the funding partners will get into more details, but you can truly diversify yourself and get out of some of the mutual funds, stocks, or bonds that you have in those investment accounts, and use a portion, if not the whole thing, to fund your business and truly diversify and invest in yourself. So tons of options. Don't assume just because you don't have a lot in savings that you can invest in a franchise. I always highly recommend to give me a call. We'll put you in touch with that funding partner, and we'll see what the options are. So don't assume. If you do have retirement assets, if you do have equity in your home, those are options as well to fund the business.
I think one of the biggest things I see with business owners, though, is they always assume the best. They never build in margin. It takes time to build your business up. And I think they think they're going to open the door and people are going to come flying in. But as a business owner, one of your biggest roles is sales. You have to be willing to go out and sell yourself or sell your product. And you also have to build up and know that there's a ramp and that sometimes it takes longer than you can imagine to get your business to the point where it is profitable, especially if you have a lot of debt, because you've got to service the debt and that can suck up. And the other thing is things do happen, right? Things don't always go the way you plan. The world throws you curveballs and you just need to be prepared for them. So having that extra margin, I think, is always good. And also taking the time to understand the financials of your business. If you don't want to look at the numbers in your business, you're going to struggle. And that's a big thing that I find. If you're not looking at your numbers personally, you're probably not going to look at them business-wise. And that's a skill you're going to have to build up because it's very important.
Yes. To add to that, and I forgot to mention, you also have to figure out, your expenses. What, do you go out to eat, go out for dinner every single night? Are you constantly entertaining? Are you going on 10 vacations a year? You need to be honest with yourself. You're going to have to make some adjustments, maybe not 10 vacations, but only 2 or none. I know I didn't take vacation my first year because I knew that there was that uncertainty the first year, in building up my business. So, look at your expenses, see what you need every month to get by. If married, is your spouse working? What's her income? Does her income cover everything? Or if that income covers half, how are you going to come up with the other half? Especially if you have a large mortgage or student debt and things like that. So really sit down and figure out the numbers. An accountant, the funding companies could help out, but you really need to sit down and figure out what are your current expenses. What can you trim down on if need be, and then figure out, okay, this is where I'm short, or maybe I'm not short. Maybe my spouse or my other income, it covers everything. So, this is what I need. The franchise companies will also just kind of give you that buffer and say, we recommend the investment may be X, but let's tack in another 20% in the event, the summer is a slow season or it just takes a little bit longer to get open. So they will review that with you, but you have to take a really close look at your spending habits, your financials, and everything. And so and no one really can do that but you. So someone looking at a franchise, aside from the soul searching to figure out if franchise ownership is for you, you don't need a funding company to help you with this. You just need to sit down, pen and paper, and list out what you want, list out your financials, and that's a really, really good starting point.
That it is. So just out of curiosity, do you only deal with starting a new franchise location, or do you also help people to buy an existing franchise that's already up and running?
Yes, so we do both. Primarily, it is new franchise locations, but a lot of resales popping up. So we do work in a broker capacity on occasion, if the market is already taken, either we will ask if they are interested in selling their business, or if there is a resale, we can give that information to our candidates. So we handle both. But specifically just in the franchising world, we don't deal with non-franchise businesses.
Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. So the question then comes is, how do you determine if it makes sense for you to buy an existing franchise and take it over versus starting your own? So
that's a good question. So there's no obviously right or wrong. It's the preference of the candidate. So if they are, in some cases, they love a business concept so much that the territory is sold and there's only a resale available. So we've really targeted in. That was the perfect match. So the resale is the only option unless we look at another company that offers a similar product or service. In an existing business, obviously you're going to pay a premium. So we also look at the model and we take a look at that as well and say, okay, do I have the assets to purchase the business? If it was, for example, $100,000 investment, and now that there's an existing business, it's $200,000. What are the terms that the seller is asking for? Yes, I do have current income coming in, but based off of that, do I have enough to pay the note on a monthly basis? So it's a case by case. We always start with the brand new franchise and see if any resales are available. But there are obviously pros and cons. There's pros on the existing business that you have a business already put in place. So if it doesn't have a lot of revenue, you may already have the location set up. So that obviously is going to save you time and money. To find and build out a location could take anywhere from 6 to 12 months. Finding the employees, they may have the employees in place. So if the revenue isn't significant, that is going to offer you a big benefit in that it's all built out for you and the staff is there. As far as negatives or cons, did they hire the right employees? Did they find the right location? You're going to be not only reviewing the financials of the actual franchise, but you're going to be looking at that owner's specific financials just to say, okay, I have to do my own due diligence, make sure that the numbers all add up. So it is a little bit more, it's an extra added step on the due diligence investigation. But definitely worth a look if you really like a brand. But there's obviously both pros and cons to either or.
A lot of people think about flipping houses. It seems to be always very popular, but people forget that there are other things that you can do. People flip websites, actually. And in this case, because I've talked to some business owners, flipping franchises or coming in and taking over when you have a franchise owner that was mismatched to the opportunity. Because as you talked about, you're making sure up front that you're matching people correctly, gives you an opportunity to buy the business at a significant discount, because if they're not profitable, nobody's going to pay for it, which allows you the ability to grab it. And then you've got to install the systems and the procedures that they probably weren't doing so well because they didn't have a good fit. And it gives you an opportunity to be able to do that as well. So there's tons of opportunity in the world if you look for it. You just have to be smart enough and think enough to actually go looking for opportunity.
Yes, and that is a very good point. Yes, there are companies, as you mentioned, franchisees mismatched. They went maybe against my advice and they decided just to buy whatever franchise interests them. And 12 months later, they're not doing well. They want to sell the business. So there are many investment groups that will come in and purchase hundreds, if not thousands, of franchises, locations. And what they do is they have a group. They have one team of bookkeepers. Instead of having a bookkeeper for every location, they may have a small team that will handle the bookkeeping and financials for all the locations. So there's definitely ways they can cut costs, pick up these franchises at a discount, and are able to run these businesses across the country. So very, very good point.
And so that brings up another point that I think is important is when you're in business, you need a team. Who do you think people should have on their team when they build this business?
So with a team, I have a team in place from I wouldn't say from day one, because it takes time to build up the team and to meet people, and some of those team members have changed over the years. But it's always good to have an accountant. Obviously, the accountant has to understand the franchise model, work with businesses. So the accountant is very important. And we have an attorney in place as well. In the franchise world, you want someone that specializes in franchising. You definitely want someone preferably local, so they know all the state and local laws if you're just functioning out of your local state. Those two people. Financial advisor. Sometimes we tend not to talk to the financial advisor. And with the financial advisor, we understand that they are compensated typically under assets under management. But a good financial advisor will give you kind of a lay of the land and take more of a holistic approach and say, okay, this is the big picture. We have a 401k, we have this investment account, we've invested in the right mix of stocks, bonds, but what other financial vehicles can we look at? You have businesses, real estate, and the list goes on. So the team I built, they are all local to me, so we have an accountant, the attorney, and the financial advisor all work together. So, for example, we have a call coming up where all three are on there, and we review the business tax return. We look at the acquisition of a potential business. We look at the legal and any risk involved. So you definitely want to have those people in place and looking out for your best interest. And the list goes on. I mean, the team, depending on the type of business, can get larger and larger. But at the end of the day, services, and we had this conversation last week, someone to help you review the numbers, such as, the services that your company offers, and just truly understanding cash flow, the difference between cash flow and net income, making sure that you're holding on to every dollar in profit, doing away with expenses that aren't needed. So the accountants may not really dig into that. So working with someone like yourself would really help with understanding numbers and really trying to figure out how do I become more profitable? And it may just be a strategy call and say, okay, well, I have 3 different franchises. Do I need a customer service rep or bookkeeper, or do I need a CFO? Can I outsource that? So having that person in your corner to help you out will definitely make you much more successful.
And I think you said something very important here. You have the team, but the team needs to know each other and talk to each other as well. And they also need to be crystal clear on your goals and your vision so that they can give you the appropriate advice. And I think more often than not, sometimes we have a team, but we don't allow the team to come together and talk to each other so that they understand the bigger picture and that they know your vision and goals. And too often we don't have those conversations. So I think it's important to make sure that you're having the conversations with all those people and they know your bigger goals, your exit strategy, what is your desire long term, because if they don't, they can't give you the best advice.
Rocky, I agree. And I've fired some people from the team. And for everyone listening, my number one piece of advice, if you can get the accountant, the attorney, the financial advisor, just say those 3, because I talk about them quite a bit. If they can't do a 5-minute call together, then they aren't the right fit for you. If you can get 2 on and not the other, then look for another, whoever that person was. If it's the attorney, get rid of them, find somebody else. If they can't make the time to invest a few minutes into you to find out, not just offer me legal advice, but find out what, who I am and my why and what I'm looking for. They don't belong on your team. Move on to the next person. That's something I've learned the hard way, and we've had some changes because of that. So that's just something I've unfortunately had to learn the hard way.
And I'll be honest, most of those people in those particular roles don't think that way. So you've got to find the ones that do. It takes work. I mean, when I look, because I'm close to the accounting side, and most of the accountants are more about the process, like put stuff where it's supposed to go, but they don't have the time many times to have those deeper conversations with you so that they better understand what you're doing. And they can say, oh, if that's your goal, we should do things differently. And it's just unfortunate. Same thing with the financing. Like, you have to have those deeper conversations with those people. And I think too often we don't always do that.
Right. And to make it simpler, we, in my case, my personal experience, we found a financial advisor was highly recommended. We clicked. She's done a great job. So I turned the table and said, okay, who can you recommend? I need you to work with my accountant and my attorney. We're starting on a clean slate. Who do you recommend? So she gave me one or two names. I interviewed them, and we put the team together. And now we have the three. They all work. They all speak on a weekly, if not a weekly, a monthly basis, just in general about just various clients, different clients. And that's how I built my team. And it's been, I think it's been about a couple years, and it's been going great. So hopefully it continues that way. So when you don't know where to look, ask the one person on your team that's doing a great job and get some referrals.
And that is very true, because they all have to be able to work together. If they're fighting each other, you're not going to have. You wrote a book, right, about franchise freedom. What prompted you to write the book?
Yeah, so I wrote the book. It's been a dream of mine to put together all my thoughts. Wanted to get all this stuff out of my head, right, and just make it as simple as possible for someone to explore business ownership. I give a very brief history of my backstory and my history, and what someone should do in order to invest in a franchise. So I've worked with business coaches. I've done research online. It just gets to be really overwhelming. So in my experience from owning businesses, both franchise and non-franchise, and working with coaches and other business owners and helping people find businesses, I said, let me put together a book that just outlines what you need to do, starting from if business ownership is the right fit, and if the right vehicle is franchising or not, into just a due diligence from getting those attributes down on paper, the financials, and then questions to ask to any franchisor, and not just, I have the money, these are my demands, take it or leave it. Franchising doesn't work that way. It's a two-way street. So we talk about the realities that many people don't talk about, in that a franchisor will interview you just like you're interviewing them. Just because you have the investment doesn't mean you'll be accepted as a franchisee. So as you are an extension of their brand. So it just talks about all the ins and outs. It's a very brief book, and we just talk about, let's get to the beginning phase. If franchising and business ownership isn't the right fit for you, you don't have to read the rest of the book. As much as I'd love for people to read the entire book, the rest of the book is how to do your due diligence. So basically, going back to your question, my why, I just wanted a simple way to give people information. But we're going to talk about an offer that we have today, but giving them the information and offering my service. So if they are unable to do the due diligence, or it's overwhelming, I offer my service, and my service is free. So I tell everyone, if you utilize myself and or just follow the process of the book, your investment in the franchise will be exactly the same. I will have the ability to coach you through the process before, during, and after, even after investing in a franchise, and offering all my experiences from working with coaches and business owners to Wall Street. So I'll be able to help in every step of the way.
You and I have a very similar philosophy in that half the time when I talk to people, it's to talk them out of something, including using my service. I'm like, you're not ready for me, or we're not a good fit. And It's funny because I know Chick-fil-A is very much like that. I know everyone, it's a big popular franchise, and they are very much about interviewing you more than anything to even see if they will allow you to get into their system. And they go through a pretty rigorous process over there to let people in. So I think people need to realize that it's not just about the money. It is a two-way conversation on both sides.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a franchise I get a lot of question on because it's a very low investment. But, we talk about corporate, how they run the business, the culture. There's a lot of things that we discuss when reviewing it. They're doing great. And to your point, extremely selective. So just because you have an interest doesn't mean, especially in that case, there is a very low percentage that you'll be accepted in buying that franchise.
I don't think people realize that. They don't know the inner workings of how that all comes to be.
Right.
So I know, because I saw you made a statement about why all of this, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. For a lot of people, we don't know what we don't know because we don't have the experiences, and then we don't ask the right questions. And the outcomes of that can be rather expensive and rather devastating. And I think that's why it's important to have the conversations, to be open and honest with yourself about what you truly want, and going through these deeper dive types of conversations that you have and that I have with customers. I think it's extremely, extremely important.
Yeah, just be honest with yourself. That's basically put a lot of the opinions aside. We call them preconceived notions about franchising. And I get a lot of people that say, well, I'm not sure about franchising, or I'm not sure about this. And we're not here to sell franchising. We're here to educate you, and based off your wants, we'll lead you in the in the direction that you're looking for. But at the end of the day, we are making intros to these franchise companies. It is up to you to continue the due diligence and make that final decision. It's all about you. Just don't think about, I had the question, well, with franchising, I heard that, and I bring this up, and not to be negative, but I always bring this up because I get this question probably on a weekly basis. I know someone that their franchise was terminated, and I said, why? And they go, well, because they weren't following the system. And I said, right, there are franchise companies that will obviously warn you, but if you're not following the system, if you're buying a McDonald's franchise and you're buying, burger patties, not from McDonald's, you're buying them from Costco or your local grocery store, and just not following the system and offering, things on the menu not offered by McDonald's corporate, yes, you will get written up. Yes, there will be some negative consequences. And if you continue that route, sure, the franchise can be terminated. So, if you're looking at franchise ownership, it's a system. You need to follow the system to be successful. And the franchisor has kind of figured out what works, what doesn't work. They've done all the heavy lifting and to figure out what is the best way of doing business. But that's essentially why you're buying a franchise. If you have no intention on buying the franchise system, that's fine as well. Maybe we want to explore a non-franchise business.
And that's very true. I don't think people realize is when you're in a system, they do tell you where to buy your stuff and how to get the items that you use within that particular franchise. And unfortunately, a lot of them charge more than you could buy it somewhere else. So they've kind of built their system too. And that's why you should have conversations with other franchise owners to get a true understanding of what it means to be part of that franchise, what their struggles are, what they like. It's having just a lot of conversations. And it seems like we always come back to these same principles in life. Have the conversations with yourself about what you really want. Have the conversations with where you're going, whether it be, a job or a franchise, and say, is this really what I think it is? and be open to listening and figuring out the truth. And I think too often we don't do that. We pretend we know, but we don't actually know. So I always like to ask for an action step. What is something that people could do this week to take a step forward in their life?
So, especially with everything going on today, many of us are working from home. Some of us may be unemployed. So, and hopefully by the time this airs, things are getting, we're in a much better place. So I would highly recommend not figuring out which franchise businesses you like and businesses, just sitting down and figuring out, where you are today and where you want to be. What does, regardless of what your life looks like today, figuring out, okay, this is how I want my life to look. This is going well, or, kind of painting that picture and then figuring out where things are missing. Do I want to own a business and I don't own a business? Well, why is that? Is it fear? Is it money? And just kind of figuring out what's the gap, what's holding you back. And hopefully what I try to do is empower everyone, regardless of your net worth or your backgrounds, doesn't make any difference to me. Empowering you to say, okay, yes, we Rocky, I'm sure you'll agree as well. There's always a fear component, but what is that fear? And typically, we say fear of the uncertainty, and I say that yes, but we can also minimize that uncertainty by doing some homework and figuring out, okay, this is where I am today, and this is where I want to be. These are my financials, breakdown as far as what I have. And the more educated I get, that fear definitely becomes smaller and smaller, because now you are empowered with that information, right? So I have the information, I get the decisions, I know what questions to ask of myself, go through that routine, spend an hour, alone, lock your office door, your bedroom door, wherever you are, go outside and kind of figure this stuff out. And once you figure that stuff out, I encourage everyone that has had an interest in business ownership, give me a call. The service is always free, and I offer everyone a 20-minute intro call just to get the ball rolling, to figure out, if this is the right direction for you. And I'll be able to tell in that 20 minutes if we're a good fit to work together. And hopefully that 20-minute investment of your time will be able to hopefully save you thousands of hours and or millions of dollars if you start buying the wrong businesses. So I encourage everyone to do that exercise. And also I have a book that if it's okay, would love to offer everyone a free copy of my book, if that's okay. I know we had mentioned that, Rocky.
Yeah, that's fine. And you can mention it now, and I'll give you a chance again to mention it at the end.
Yeah, so the book is Franchise Freedom. It's a very brief book, as we discussed, and you can get a copy of that right on my website, ggthefranchiseguide.com/richer soul. So everyone listening in, we're offering just a free promotion, GG the Franchise Guide /richer soul. Get a free copy and get the ball rolling. Definitely get some education as to the type of businesses out there, your various options, and would love to hear from you and love to speak with you.
And, I think that's an important thing, is having the conversation, even if the outcome is, no, this isn't right for me, closes that door, and it creates more space for you to then say, what is it that I want to do? Or maybe it opens the door. But if you don't have the conversation, you're sitting there stuck all the time. And that's the bigger problem, is being stuck. Take the step. It doesn't hurt to have a 20-minute conversation with people.
Right. It may be one less show on the DVR, but absolutely. Well, we invest the time, and the 20-minute call is essentially me asking your why. I'm going to ask you exactly what you wrote down on that piece of paper, and figuring out what the action steps are. But yes, to your point, deciding not maybe, it's either yes or no. I lost my job. I don't want to go back into the corporate world. I've always thought about owning a business. Let's talk. Do the homework. Let's talk for 20 minutes and make that decision. And that decision, I think, is extremely important 20-minute phone call you can have. It's a small investment, and as I mentioned, I guarantee you'll learn something and get something from that conversation.
And that's very true. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
My secret to an abundant life is knowing what's important to you. If it's spending time with family and things, and then building your life around that, not trying to fit that in. So I always recommend on a calendar, putting all the action steps, going out to dinner with your wife, vacations, and then everything else is second to that. And someone coach years ago taught me that, and I still live by that principle today.
And that's the principle I live by. I always wanted to be there for my kids, and so we put all their activities on our calendar first and plan the events around them so that I could be there for them, because that's much more important than the money itself. And so we very much did that. What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner? Later in life,
as a young 20-year-old, I kind of going back to number one, I thought it was all about money. So every decision I made, and if I'm completely honest, including the employment positions I was in, was all about money. I looked at what had the highest potential, and that's what I kind of went after. Definitely lost the interest and the drive as the years went on, and that's what got me into business ownership. And that I didn't necessarily want. It's always nice to make money, but I wanted a vehicle to allow me to have that time flexibility. So unfortunately, I learned that later on. I wish I had that principle, and I like to ingrain that into my children today.
And that's very true. I mean, for me, it was the same thing. Money gives me time freedom, and you need to make sure you have the time freedom, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. 18-year-old. Let's see. You're not going to learn everything in school. I think it's all about exposure. And that's one thing looking back, because at 18, you're essentially graduating or going into your freshman or sophomore year in college, should you decide to go that route. So, make the most out of school, take different classes, but it's all about, in my opinion, exposure. And exposure to me means back when I was 18, the internet was still pretty new, and I had to go to my university. We didn't have internet at home. It was really expensive. But now I'm aging myself. But I tell everyone, exposure isn't about, let me look at a certain career or certain subject matter online and decide if I like it or not. Go out and explore. When I was an intern in the investment world, and I remember asking, it was a older gentleman ready to retire. He's been a financial advisor for many, many years, probably about 40 plus years. And I said to him, and I still remember this, the conversation, I asked him, what's your number one piece of advice? I'm making minimum wage. I'm, doing the mail for the office for 70 plus brokers. I want to learn this business. What's your best piece of advice? And he's like, well, in life, you always have to, as you mentioned, sell yourself. So quit your job here and work across the street at, I remember it was Firestone at the time, and go sell tires. And I told him, you're nuts. And I never took his advice. I told him it was crazy. He told me about 2 or 3 times. And I told him, you're getting older. You're starting to lose your mind. And only, I'd say, I graduated college. It's been many, many years since I had been in that position. And only until maybe the last 10 years, or actually, I should say 15 plus years ago, when I started my first business, is when that kind of sunk in and said, you know what, looking back, I learned a lot about the investment world, where I could have probably learned that same amount of info just giving him a call once a week. But maybe I would have been better off in sales, as I have to sell myself on a daily basis, selling tires. So it's something that stuck with me. And I wish I was able to tell my 18-year-old self to work for Firestone.
Honestly, and it's one of those things that nobody thinks about. but sales is essentially a skill we all need, whether we want to date, or to get our kids to do something or to generate business. It all comes back to sales. And if you can master that, you can essentially have everything you want.
Yes. And it doesn't matter the whole, labeling of introvert, extrovert. That's a bunch of baloney. You do have to sell yourself. Yes, there are people that are more introverted than extroverted, but at the end of the day, you do have to sell yourself. When you get a job, a resume, that's a marketing piece, right? That's sales. You have to tell them why they should hire you versus the next person. So we're not saying you're going to go door-to-door sales in your business, but you definitely are selling, if not, when you get into business, not just yourself, it's the company, it's the culture, it's, maybe you're not closing deals on a daily basis, but you're just networking, getting into the community, talking about how your company makes a difference. So, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter what you're selling. It's just getting out of your comfort zone and learning that. Not saying you have to work for Firestone or a tire company, but go out there and, I wanted to be in the investment world, so I worked with an investment company. You don't necessarily have to do that. I would definitely recommend internships, but talking to different business owners, trying different things, maybe a company that has a bunch of offerings. Go out there, explore, try stuff out, fall on your face. It's the best experience, especially when you're, 18, 19 years old. That's couldn't ask for a better time.
Very true. If people would like to find you and connect and learn more, what is the best way for them to do that?
You can go directly on my website. It's GG, my initials, thefranchiseguide.com. And on the website, we talk a little bit of our 4-step process. If anyone has an interest in business or franchise ownership, we do have a pre-recorded webinar on there that will give you just a ton of information on business ownership and franchising and the pros and cons of both. My podcast is on there, Franchise Freedom, and on there as well is the book offer, so you can get a free copy of my book. And so all the information on there. And if you're ready, phone number, email, there's a calendar link. You can get in touch with me directly. The email is gg@ggthefranchiseguide.com, goes directly to me. Ask any questions you have. If you just want to book a call, go to the calendar link. I'll be more than glad. I return every call, every email, and typically within the same day, within 24 hours.
Cool. Thank you so much for offering that. And I will put all of that in the show notes to make it easy for people. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Rocky. Had a blast.
I always enjoy conversations with Giuseppe. You can get his free book at ggthefranchiseguide.com/richer soul. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. Have you ever thought about running your own business? I know it's scary. Building a runway to be able to walk away from work, though, helps to ensure a better future and a smoother start. The future of jobs is uncertain, and owning your income stream is one way to build wealth, but it's not for everyone. You have to understand yourself and your goals. One way is to test the waters is to have a side business. We've had a side business for over 20 years before I started doing this full time. It was always there as a safety net, and it allowed me some tax advantages. We actually have multiple streams of income. I highly recommend building a network and a reputation for yourself in the community. Many times life will surprise you, and it's a lot easier to get moving when you already have a foundation built. You just need to rev it up. And we've got a couple other foundations sitting around here waiting to get ramped. This week's action step, ask, where am I today and where do I want to be? It's a powerful exercise to go through, and everyone should do it. Imagine where you would be if you would answer that question at age 18 with clarity. It's time to move forward and build the life you deserve. Taking no action creates a far worse outcome in life than trying something and failing. I can help you achieve your goals through coaching and accountability. Use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on my calendar, and let's get you the life of your dreams. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.